All right, nearly 24 hours until the scheduled launch of the first crewed mission around the moon in more than 50 years. If the Artemis II rocket takes off tomorrow as planned, the 3-man, 1-woman crew inside will travel farther from the Earth than any humans before, more than 4,100 miles. That would surpass the mark set by the Apollo 13 crew back in 1970. Joining us live from the Kennedy Space Center is Bloomberg space reporter Loren Grush. Loren, great to be with you. It's been more than half a century since astronauts set foot on the moon. It was a huge moment in U.S. history. Why are we doing a mission like this again? Is this still about a space race with China and Russia at this point?
Well, I think it depends on who you ask. Definitely lawmakers and White House officials will say that there's a great urgency to beat China back to the moon. China has its own ambitions of putting humans on the surface of the moon. So we want to get back there again. Remember, we were there first, but we want to get back there again before they do. And the idea is that maybe if China gets there first, they could somehow prevent us from exploring the moon in the way that we would like to explore it, maybe by setting up some kind of perimeter or something like that. Obviously, that's a hypothetical scenario, but something that lawmakers and military officials are worried about. But when it comes to NASA, you know, exploration and a flagship human spaceflight mission like this is in NASA's DNA. You know, the Apollo program essentially, you know, put NASA on the map. And so, you know, after decades of, you know, kind of sending astronauts to low Earth orbit with the space shuttle and the International Space Station, there's like the sense that it's time to move on, and the moon is the most logical next destination for that.
And how is this mission setting up an even bigger mission to Mars?
So the plan with this program, the Artemis program, which is the twin goddess of Apollo, is they don't want to do what they did last time where they just left flags and footprints. The idea for this mission is to live sustainably on the moon, to see what it takes to live on another planetary body. And so those lessons that we learn from keeping humans alive on the surface of the moon, that could one day be applied to Mars. You know, the moon is a great testing ground because it's closer, and we have, you know, easier communication with the moon because it's relatively close. But that's going to get significantly harder when we go to Mars, and Mars is much farther away. There's no easy way to evacuate Mars, and the communication time will vary greatly depending on where Mars is on its orbit. So we're going to have to know how to be much more autonomous on the surface of Mars, and the moon will be a great way to test out those capabilities before we are essentially on our own out there.
Fascinating. And I want to talk about the logistics of the mission itself, because even if there is a successful launch tomorrow, there's a checklist that needs to be completed before each milestone of this mission. If at any point on that checklist that is not met, do they have to abort the mission and come home?
Yeah, there are certainly various parameters that they need to be able to meet in order to conduct a very successful mission. And at each point along the way, there are various abort opportunities. So during the launch itself, there are ways, you know, if there's something wrong with the rocket, there's a launch escape system that will carry the crew to safety. And then at some point, you know, when they get to Earth orbit, they can decide if there's some kind of technical issue, if they actually want to execute that translunar injection burn that puts them on course to the moon. If they don't do that, then they'll just spend time in orbit and they'll bring the crew back home. Obviously, that's not an ideal scenario, but they have that capability as well. Once they conduct that translunar injection burn that sends them onto the moon, then it becomes a bit of diminishing returns on whether or not they can, you know, abort from that and come home. They're basically playing with gravity here, the moon's gravity and the Earth's gravity. And at some point, the Earth is going to bring them back around again. So there's kind of diminishing returns on breaking free from that trajectory, but they're not going to make that decision to do that burn unless they're very confident that everything is going smoothly.
Absolutely. Well, it's going to be a very exciting day tomorrow. Loren Grush, thank you so much for being with us. And we will have special coverage of the Artemis II launch on Wednesday right here on CBS News 24/7.